Okay, today you'll be reading John chapter 5, verses 1 through 18, and I'll be reading that from the Lexham English Bible. After these things, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool called in Aramaic Bethzatha, which has 5 porticos. In these were lying a large number of those who were sick, blind, lame, paralyzed. And a certain man was there who had been 38 years in his sickness. Jesus, when he saw this one lying there, and he knew that he had been sick a long time already, said to him, "Do you want to become well?" The one who is sick answered him, "Sir, I do not have anyone that, whenever the water is stirred up, could put me into the pool. But while I am coming, another goes down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." And immediately the man became well and picked up his mat and began to walk. Now it was the Sabbath on that day. So the Jews were saying to the one who had been healed, "Is this the Sabbath, and is it not permitted for you to pick up your mat?" But he answered them, "The one who made me well, that one said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" So they asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Pick up your mat and walk'?" But the one who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn while a crowd was in the place. After these things, Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, "Look, you have become well. Sin no longer, lest something worse happen to you." The man went and reported to the Jews that Jesus was the one who made him well. And on account of this, the Jews began to persecute Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But he answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I am working." So on account of this, the Jews were seeking even more to kill him, because he not only was breaking the Sabbath, but also was calling God his own Father, thus making himself equal with God.
I was actually moved by that scripture reading today, and that will be our text for today. How about that? What a coincidence. There's so much packed into this message from John 5, and I want to go over that and expound upon it a bit today. And just look at the context of what that was all about and what we can learn from that beyond just what we read, and applications in our own lives. It starts with John 5, verse 1, a festival of the Yehudim, or the Jews. My Bible translates that into the Hebrew. And he went up to Jerusalem. Did it say which feast it was? Anybody have a clue whether or not it was around Passover time, or it was the days of Feast of Tabernacles? But the sheep gate, why? In verse 2, and in Jerusalem at the sheep gate there was a pool. There's actually several pools there. And it was in Hebrew, Bethsaida, having 5 porches. So there's 5 different pools there. Why is it called the sheep gate? Why called the sheep gate? That was the gate where the priests would bring in the sheep to be sacrificed. They'd bring in the lambs, for example, through the sheep gate, which is on the northern side. If you look at the Temple Mount platform, it's on the northern part of that is where the sheep gate, and they went through, and they actually had a pool where they would actually mikveh, or wash the sheep, so that they were now ritually cleansed for the sacrifice. And this other pool was not for the sheep, it was for the people, and that's where this lame man was. And there were a great number of those who were sick and blind and crippled, paralyzed, waiting for the stirring of the waters. Now, this is an interesting thing. What was the stirring of the waters? Was it a rumor? Was it a legend that this happened? Or was there a spirit or angel that stirred up the waters? It made me kind of wonder that maybe the fact that Jesus, Yeshua, was there, may have activated the water in itself. How many times did that happen? I'm just speculating here. Did every time he come around, all of a sudden, the waters begin to get stirred up? You know, there's People go to health spas, like up in Hot Springs, Arkansas, real popular 100 years ago, to have the mineral baths and the warm water, that people would be healed by that or comforted. But I don't think this water wouldn't have been that hot unless it was in the middle of the summer. But that's not the point. For a messenger was going down at a certain time into the pool and was stirring up the water. Whoever stepped in first became well, and whatever disease he has. Now, why would it be only one person? Okay, you got to be the first one in line. And if you didn't get there in time, and of course, if you're lame, how are you going to hurry up and jump in there? If you're lame, you're going to have to roll yourself over to jump in the water. I don't know whether that was just a urban legend, or is that really what happened? That's what they believed. And a certain man, 38 years, lame. And what's interesting in this verse 6, he had been there a long time, and he said to him, "Do you wish to become well?" Isn't that an interesting question? Man's been sick, lame for 38 years, and is there any doubt that he wants to be healed? But he asked the person the question. Did he get an answer? Did he get an answer from the lame man? No, he really didn't. He says, "Master, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred, but while I'm coming, another one gets there in front of me, he gets it, and I don't get healed." Was that an answer, or was that a complaint? He was Jewish. He was kvetching, always complaining. And after that, Jesus says, "Rise, take up your bed, and walk." Let's back up a little bit. There's a lot packed into this. He asked the question, "Do you want to become well?" Which should have been an obvious, well, yes. But why did the lame man say, "Well, yes, please"? Or had he given up hope? Had he given up hope? Somebody always beats to it. Somebody always gets the prize. Somebody always luckier than I am. Oh, woe is me. Let's have a little pity party. Because there's always a reason, an excuse why I don't get healed. But it wasn't a request. It was an excuse. It was a complaint. I heard a radio evangelist talking one day about a man that would come down to the aisle, or down the aisles, this must have been like a charismatic or Pentecostal type service. And people come down to the end, and to the preacher, and they want to be healed, they want to be prayed over, they want to be blessed. And this preacher kept noticing this same guy every Sunday morning. He showed up there in the front, wanting to be prayed for, to be healed. And finally, the preacher, I don't know what inspired him to do this. Maybe he had just read this verse, and he says, "Do you really wish to be healed?" Asked the man a blunt question. Well, the man was kind of shaken by that, thrown off guard, and he goes, well, not really. Well, if I got healed, then I'd have to go out and get a job and work for a living. Wow. I'd have to go out and work for a living. I wouldn't get to be the way I am. I would have expectations, responsibilities. I'd have to not just think about myself, but everybody else. Right now, everybody's catering to me. They're giving me alms for the poor. And I saw these people when I was in Jerusalem. Some things don't change 2,000 years later. They're still there. People that are blind, act like they're blind. They got a cup, and they're jingling it around. And then you start bringing money to them, and they move it closer. Like, is he legally blind, or is he really blind? But I thought, man, that's 2,000 years. People haven't changed very much. But many times we can learn something from this particular scripture is, do you really want to be healed? Do you really want to change? If we were able to manifest the changes that we want in life, that we want, or we feel like God requires us to do, well, what would happen? Do we lose something by gaining something? Many times I think we hold on to our whatever it is, our shortcomings, our healings. So, well, I just can't change, or I just can't do that. And it's air cover. It's an excuse for not being able to step up into our responsibility. Do you think that ever shows up in your lives or in my life? That sometimes we're comfortable with our discomfort because we're comfortable with it. We know how to deal in this environment. We know how to survive in this environment, and it's more comfortable. Even though it's uncomfortable, it's more comfortable than having to change and go into a realm where we don't know what's going to happen. Have you heard of a people? Maybe they were slaves in Egypt for a couple hundred years. And did they want to be did they want to be freed? If you had to ask all these people, do you want to be free? Not have to slog away in the mud pits every day and build bricks? Probably if they said, well, sure, I'd rather not have to do that. I could use a day off. I haven't had one in 20 years. But once they got out of Egypt, well, they lost something they had. They didn't have the fish. They didn't have the leeks and the onions or whatever they were. The things they were accustomed to, even though they had to put up with all of that slavery, they got used to it. They got acclimated to that life. They didn't have the same levels of responsibility that they had once they got into the desert, into the wilderness, into Bamidbar, as it's called in Hebrew. Then they had responsibilities. They had a future they had to get ready for. They weren't ready for it. They wanted to go back. Oh, let's go back to Egypt. At least we got food there. The government gives us food. Ooh, yes, the government. They give us food. So many times people can get locked into generational poverty because it's free. I don't have to do anything except jump through a few hoops to make sure I keep qualifying for some kind of welfare or giveaway program. And even though most people think, why would you want to live? Why would you want to live this way? But they got used to it and they knew how to survive in that environment, but they weren't ready to step up to ownership and owning their future. It was still, they were used to other people telling them what to do, and there's a comfort in that. I work in prisons. I go into prisons. I have somebody covering today. I have a Sabbath service that I conduct right about right now at Bradshaw State Jail in Henderson. So I go into prison 2, 3, sometimes 4 days a week. And I keep seeing, sometimes I see the same people that I worked with 5 years ago, and they're back. What are they doing here? Their 4th or 5th time to be in prison, and they come back. A lot of it is they have addictive personalities. If they were put in jail for drunk driving or drugs, then as soon as they get out, somebody gives them something, boom, they're right back at it. I mean, a man that I really liked at East Texas Treatment Facility, he was one of my officers of my Toastmasters Club there. And he was on parole, and he went out and did something stupid. He's back in the pen again. Like, how could this happen over and over again? And it becomes an institutional, they become institutionalized after a while, just like the children in Israel. They got used to it. They learned how to work within that system. They do all the workarounds, and they could still have their leeks and vegetables and their fried fish and get by. But it's a horrible life. I go into prison. It's not a nice place to be. It can be a place of learning. I call it, rather than Bradshaw State Jail, it's Bradshaw State University, a place for you to learn your lessons and to move on, but not to come back and just be another model prisoner. But next time, go out and become a leader. Play offense, don't play defense. You can be a leader in your family, in your community. You can go out and do something for the betterment of the world. But don't keep coming back. But sometimes, one guy told me, it's easier being inside than outside. If you spend half your life inside, behind locked doors, you don't really know how to survive in the real world. It's moved on. Technology has changed. You're not in the right synchronization. Now, some people can go back in and snap right into it. Many of these people have businesses, and they're wealthy people. And they donate money for the banquets we have. They're not all broke. There are some that are indigent. They have nobody to put money in their commissary account so they can go buy a toothbrush or deodorant or soap. They are totally dependent on whatever the state will give them. And that's a horrible existence. But why do people keep coming back? Because they don't know how to live in the real world. And it's easier to put up with that. If you know the rules, you obey the rules, then stay out of fights. Not all of them do that. They're a little volatile. Then you can just get by. And it's existing. It's not really surviving. So we might want to think about this ourselves is, are there areas in our life that we are comfortable with our weaknesses? We're comfortable with our deficiencies. And that's okay. It's just easier this way. Something to think about. Where does that show up in our lives? We know the story. We just heard it. He took up his bed, and of course, they accused him of working on the Sabbath. And that was because of the laws, the Talmudic laws that they came up with, that it wasn't okay to do that. But Jesus never broke a commandment. He doubled down on the commandments. He said, I didn't come to destroy the law. I came to fulfill it, to expand on it, to double down on it. He says, even if you lust after a person, you have committed adultery in your heart. Well, that's a bigger commitment, isn't it? That's not watering it down. It's like you got to keep the letter of the law and the real intent, the spirit of the law. And he said, let's keep going down here. So at verse 13, but the one who was healed did not know who he was. They asked, who are you? He didn't know who it was. He was just happy to be healed. Afterwards, Yeshua found him in the set-apart place, or the temple, and said to him, see how you've been made well. Sin no more, so that no worse matter befalls you. Which means he needs to do teshuvah. He needs to turn around and walk a different way. Now he actually can walk a different way, because now he can walk. But don't go back to what put you in that situation in the first place. There seems to be an inference that there was perhaps a punishment, but he says something else could happen to you. Maybe it's not being lame, it's something else. And the man went away and told the Yehudim, or the Jews, that it was Yeshua, by this time he knew who it was, who made him well. Verse 17, but Jesus answered and says, my Father works until now, and I work. I think that's a commandment that we can all double down on. It says, my Father is working, and I'm working. It seems like in a lot of mainstream Christianity, the goal is to go to heaven when you die, like you're going to be in a better place. As if heaven is some celestial retirement. You're on a retirement plan, you've earned your keeps, now you can sail away float on a cloud and play a harp if you know how to play a harp, or take harp lessons or whatever. But now you got it made, it's on cruise control. Well, here's the Father and the Son, the creators of everything, and they're working. No retirement. They're working. They got a plan. There's a plan of God out there. There's a plan of salvation, the kingdom. We're working towards the kingdom, not going into retirement. Because of this, the Yehudim were seeking, by the way, Yehudim is the Hebrew word for multiple, Judah or Yehuda, and the plural, it's Yehudim. That's the way my Bible's written. We're seeking more to kill him because he was breaking the Sabbath, but he also equaled himself with God. Now, another thing that we don't see in this, but I think you could imply it, is here's this man who was at the pool waiting for the water to stir, which meant he was outside the temple, outside the wall that created, this was the Temple Mount platform. In the center you had the temple and all the stores over here. If this was the north, I guess the west. If this was the north, the sheep gate was over here. He was over here on the north side. And the Tower of Antonio fortress would have been standing right here looking over the temple, where the Romans could look over and see what's going in the temple. So if he was over here and he couldn't walk, then he probably never was able to be in the temple platform complex for the Amidah, or the standing prayer. 3 times a day at 9 in the morning, at noon, and 3 o'clock, they had the Amidah, which is a prayer that everybody stands for. So just imagine, I can imagine this man having wanted to be there in the temple, to be able to walk into the place for the very first time. And then when the standing prayer comes up, he can stand and he can sing or recite, be there for the standing prayer. I mean, that must have been a joyous moment for him to finally be able to be there during the standing prayer, or the Amidah. So that's a lot of lessons we can learn from all of these scriptures if we just drill down just a little bit deeper into it. The next thing I want to talk about, and the reason I brought my shofar up here for a reason, is the shofar tells the story, the 4 sounds tells the story of the plan of salvation, the whole plan. And I've been blowing on this one I just got in Jerusalem. Actually, bought this one at the Sea of Galilee. I've been playing for about 5 years, and there's 4 different sounds that we make on the shofar. And the first one, I did this before when we were here, may have been during the Feast of Tabernacles. It's called the Tekiah, the long blast. That's the long blast. And what that symbolizes is 2 things. One, it is a call for attention, how they used this back in the land. It was a call for attention. If you heard one blast, if you were one of the chiefs of your tribe, one of the commanders, you're supposed to show up in front of the tent of appointment, which means in front of where Moses was there at the sanctuary, if a sanctuary had been built. So it is a call to assemble the leaders. But if you heard 2 blasts, 2 blasts, then everybody was to show up. And there were 2 or 3 million people probably there, out there in the desert, and they had to show up. So everybody had to assemble. The second sound that we make on the shofar is the shavarim, and it's a wavy sound. And that one has more of a mournful sound that can be a wailing or a moaning, a lament. Could be like a minor chord, you might say. And then is that the right thing? Minor chord? A downer. And then the third one is called the trua, which is the trumpet blast. And that's what we were doing basically when the God speaks to us, him, is we were doing that trumpet blast. God speaks to us. Listen up. It's a call to responsibility, a call to put on your sword, strap on your sword, grab your shield, put on your belt, and get out there, and time for war, either to attack or it's time to be defense because the enemy is coming to take over your camp. So that is a call of alarm. And many times there's times when we need to alarm ourselves. Matter of fact, I told you guys a story, if you were here for the Bible study, about when I had my come to Jesus moment during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, 1972, right before I went to Israel. And some friends of mine intervened on me and told me what was going on and how I needed to straighten up. That was like blasting like this. Thankfully, I responded to that, and it changed my life. So that was the third one, called the Tekiah. The last one is the Teruah, it's called the Tekiah Hagodalah, which means the great one. And it goes, it's as long as you can hold it, breath. And that was blown at the coronation of kings. When great things happened, it was a triumphal, happy, and victorious sound. Well, what's interesting about these four different sounds I mentioned, how it relates to the plan of God, the plan of salvation. And it dawned on me, listening to different interpretations of this. The first one, that Tekiah blast, represents in the beginning, when things were good. God created the heavens and the earth and recreated it, Genesis 1-2, and then put all the grasses around and the animals and people, and then put Adam and Eve on the scene and plopped them down there in the Garden of Eden. They were happy. Everything was going great. They were one with God. They walked with God. So that represents, that long sound, a sound of peace, where things are coherent. They're together. Everything is working. The second sound, as I mentioned, the wavering sound, the shavarim, represents things went off the track. We know what happened with Adam and Eve and taking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We know what happened with Cain when he slew his brother and said, hey, it's not my day to watch my brother, that kind of thing. When God asked him, where's your brother? What happened to it? That's when man sinned and evil came into the world, and we've had nothing but conflicts and wars and strife for the last 6,000 years. So it's representing things going wrong, the fall, you might say, things being broken, not working right. So that's the second one. The third one, we're digging a little deeper in terms of these sounds, how this relates to the plan of God. The third one is that sound of alarm, which is just what it sounds like. There's a time for the earth to get their act together. It's time for the mankind to grow up and to accept their responsibilities, to walk in the image of God, to be a reflection of God, to be in the likeness of God. God made us in his own likeness. How are we living up to that? Are we living in the likeness of God? Are we living in our own likenesses, creating our own little kingdom of self? So the third part is to wake us up, to sound the alarm that there is a change coming, and we need to be on the right side of the change. We need to be the change we expect in the world. We need to transform and conform to become the new creation, to become a new creature, as we read about in the New Testament, to put the law of God in our hearts, not just in our deeds and actions, but really believe it. So that's the third part, the truah, this trumpet sound. And then the fourth one is that long blast of the Tekiah. That represents when the kingdom of God is established and the restitution of all things we read about in Acts 2 and 3, I believe. When everything has been restored, when Christ is on his throne and he is our God. We have no other gods. We're not practicing Baal or offering our children to Molech, either physically like they did back then or through other ways that humans do it today for the convenience of their families. But when things are set right again, then there's this long period of peace. Think of it as the millennium. It's a long time. And then a new heavens and a new earth that will go on for a long, 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 long time. So that represents that. So I'll just do the whole thing one more time, see if you can put that together, whether that resonates with you. Kingdom of God. Finally. Now for the third part of my message today, in the time we have remaining, I'm going to connect this scripture to, I think, one of the most overlooked scriptures in the Torah or the Tanakh, the Old Testament, and that is in Exodus 19. In verse 1, in the third new month after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, or Mizraim in Hebrew, on this day they came to the wilderness of Sinai. And this is Exodus 19, verse 1. We're going to read through a lot of this. And they camped before the mountain, verse 2. And verse 3, Moshe went up to God and called him from the mountain. This is what you're to say to the house of Jacob and declare to the children of Israel. You have seen what I did to the Mitzrites, to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. And now, if you diligently obey my voice and shall stand guard, keep my covenant, there's a covenant being made, then you shall be my treasured possessions above all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be unto me a reign of priests and a set apart nation. Those are your words which you're to speak to the children of Israel. And Moshe came and called for the elders of the people and set them before them all these words that Yehovah, or God, had commanded them. And all the people answered together and says, all that God has spoken we shall do. So Moses brought back the words to the people. Kind of reminds you perhaps of a wedding. People are excited about getting a wedding and they ask, are you willing to do such and such? And they, yes, I do. And sometimes they don't really realize what they're getting into. And people have second thoughts about that. Did I really say that? Well, so Moses brought back the words of the people to the Eternal. Basically, we're talking about ratifying this covenant, which is a bridal type of a covenant. And the Eternal said to Moshe, see, I'm coming to you in the thick cloud so that the people hear, and when I speak to you and believe you forever. And Moshe reported the words of the people to the Eternal, or God. And God said to Moses, go to the people and set them apart today, for tomorrow they shall wash their garments and be prepared for the third day. And they shall come down on Mount Sinai before the eyes of all the people. Now, the Jewish tradition is this event happened on the day of Pentecost. The day of Pentecost, or Shavuot, was the day that the law was given to Israel. And if you look at that, third month, that's the month of Sivan, the third month. And on this day, so we're looking at the right time frame, that this has very likely happened. And that's when the law was given to the people. And then 1,500 years later is when the living Torah, Jesus came as the fulfillment of that Torah, and the Holy Spirit was poured out to the people. So things happen in Hebrew culture. Things happen once, they happen again, they repeat. Maybe a little differently, but they repeat. But that's when the Holy Spirit was given in the book of Acts, and this is when the law was given to the people. And there's this back and forth where Moses is going up to the mountain saying, don't let the people touch it, stay back a little bit. Kind of reminds me of a wedding, right? No, you can't be with the bride right now. Don't come close, wait till the wedding. It's kind of like that. And verse 13, when the Yovel sounds long, let them come near the mountain. What is the Yovel? That word Yovel is the same word is used for blowing of a horn, also the same as the shofar and the jubilee. The word Yovel in Hebrew, or jubel, has to do with the release, the captivity being released, people's debts being forgiven. At the 50th year, you got your lands back. Your debts were all cleared. So, but when they did that, they always blew that ram's horn to symbolize freedom. So the word Yovel has many words. It means the actual shofar or the sound of the shofar. It has to do with the freedom, the releasing, and it's associated with the 50 years of the Jubilee, which we don't have any evidence that they ever really kept it. So when the Yovel sounds long, let him come near the mountain. Now we're getting some little bit of details about, I mentioned there's short sounds and long sounds, so this would be the long sound. Come near the mountain. Boom, like that first one I did. Verse 14, and Moshe came down from the mountain, and they washed their garments, and said to the people, be prepared for by the third day, do not come near a wife. And on the third day, verse 16, there will be thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountains, and a voice of the shofar was very strong. And all the people were in the camp, and they trembled. They got afraid. They were scared, you might say. And Moshe brought the people out of the camp to meet with Elohim, and they stood at the foot of the mountain, and there was smoke, and God descended upon it in fire, and the smoke went up like a smoke of a furnace, and all the mountain trembled exceedingly. And when a voice of the shofar, there we go with that shofar again, sounded long and became very strong, Moses spoke, and Elohim answered them by voice. When you play that shofar, it starts off with a lower notes, but you got to blow harder and harder to get it to the next frequency up from like an E to a B, as Dixon asked him to tell me what my notes were. I'm tone deaf, so I can't tell the difference, but he knows what they are. But it became strong, so you get louder and louder and louder until the point where people say, stop. I take this to school sometimes. So some kids I do substitute teaching or sensitive to sound. They can't stand it, but most people, the kids like it. It's interesting for them. And let's skip over to let's get over to 20. We all know Exodus 20. Anybody want to say, what's contained in Exodus 20? Make this interactive for a second. 10 Commandments. Anybody else have a different interpretation? What else was it? A year ago or so, I gave an interactive Bible study right in there, and I was talking about the 10 Commandments. And I had heard a radio show, a Christian radio program, and the talk show host had a preacher on, and they were going to talk about the 10 Commandments. And he says, I wonder how many people know the 10 Commandments. I'm not going to put any of you on the spot. And he says, well, I can think of 3. You're a Christian radio show, and you can think of only 3 commandments? Now, the man who was the guest, he knew them all by heart. But if I were to ask you, does anybody know the 10 Commandments in order, almost verbatim? How many people's hands would go up? You don't have to do it. I bet you if there's some young kids in the group that went to imperial schools, they would nail them. I remember my son was in a Bible, Bible contest one night when I was in Pasadena, and he was like 10 years old or 11, and he was with some older kids, and they asked a Bible, Bible trivia kind of thing, Bible Bowl, and they said, who are the 12 tribes of Israel? And my son just rattled these things off like, how did he know that? I mean, I didn't know he knew that, but kids can really memorize things amazingly well. But anyway, I was just shocked that this man didn't seem to be ashamed that he didn't know more than 3 of them on the spot. I probably couldn't have put them in order either. Well, there was another radio show I heard once, or it might have been a Zoomcast, of a man that was sitting with a rabbi, an evangelist, and they got talking. He said, I don't understand my daughter. She got picked up for shoplifting. She was stealing things at a department store. Well, how come she didn't know any better? And he says, well, did you teach her the 10 Commandments? And he goes, no, I told her to love God. Just love God. But didn't bother to teach her about the Ten Commandments, which is how you love God. How do you show love to your fellow man? And he was astonished that she was like indignant, like, well, I needed it, I wanted it, and there it was, so I took it with me. What's the big deal? Like she didn't get it, that she did something wrong. Well, if you don't believe in Ten Commandments, you make up what's wrong, right? It's all, you're your own God, you're your own lawmaker, you're your own lawgiver. And that was really shocking to this preacher, that we need to teach these to our children. Now, here's the thing I want to get to, because we're getting close to the hour. We know that, we think it's the Ten Commandments, but I saw it in a complete Jewish Bible one time, and I looked at it and I go, well, that's not quite what I thought it was. Look what it says. And Elohim, verse 1 of 20, spoke all these words, saying. He didn't say all of these mitzvot or commandments. He says these words. And the words here is devarim, or devar, which means to speak. And words are thoughts or ideas or concepts. That he gave them 10 words, 10 ideas, not 10 commandments. And I thought I knew the 10 commandments. And I didn't know the 10 commandments. Well, actually, the 10 commandments are there, but they're embedded within a larger context of the 10 words. So look what it says here. And the complete Jewish Bible breaks it out. Number 1, I am Yehovah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim and out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other mighty ones before my face. That's all the first word. It's a complete statement. It's a preamble for the commandments. And yes, the commandments follow right in place here. But if you think of it in this terms, that there are, the 10 words begins with, I am Yehovah, or Jehovah, the Eternal, your Elohim, your God, who brought you out. It sets the context for what the rest of it is all about. Therefore, you don't create any images of these things on earth below or in the sky above. So when I looked at that, I realized, I thought I knew the 10 Commandments, and I'm taken right back to the study hall again and had to learn it all over again. Going to finish with this one thing. After 10 words were spoken, the people saw the thunders and the lightning flashes and the voice of the shofar and the mountain smoking, and they trembled and stood at a distance, and says to Moshe, you speak to us and we will hear, but don't let God speak to us lest we die. I think that was as blatant of a sin as the golden calf. When the people says, we want an intermediary. We want somebody else to talk to us. We want somebody to explain it to us rather than getting it directly from God. They had the opportunity right there, direct communication with the Creator. And what did they do? They chose a man, somebody else, to work before. We don't know. Maybe there were 15 commandments, and they interrupted God, and we only got 10. We got gypped. I'm going to finish with one blast and then conclude. So when you hear the shofar blast, think of it in terms of the plan of salvation being played out musically.